Debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And joining me tonight on the news are Dr. Sambit Patra, national spokesperson of the BJP, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst, Dr. Sumant Sriraman, political analyst, Manasvi Thapar, lawyer. But my first question goes to the man who has brought out several pieces of facts, as he calls them, Advocate Dr. Adesh Aggarwala, chairman of the All India Bar Association. Dr. Adesh Aggarwal, the country is asking a question. After the points that you've raised, you say that Mr. Hamid Ansari had asked Nusrat Mirza to be invited. You did not do so. You said he reduced his presence at the conference from 1 hour to 20 minutes. Hamid Ansari says absolutely nothing doing. I don't know the man. I have no relationship, never met him. Dr. Aggarwal, how do you respond to that? It's your word against Mr. Hamid Ansari, who's been the vice president and held that high office for 10 years. Why should people believe you and not him?
This is, my question is, kindly don't believe me. Question is whether the vice president has come only for 20 minutes. Whether a president or vice president can leave the inaugural ceremony and inaugural ceremony is continuing. When I specially asked Mr. Ashok Diwan that if Honorable Vice President is unable to spare the 1 hour which already agreed, why he is curtailing, so he told that he is annoyed. So I requested him not to come because it will bring down the reputation of country that the second head of the state is leaving the conference in the midst of the inaugural ceremony. No chief guest is staying in the entire conference, entire seminar. This is a fact. But inaugural ceremony, either you attend or not attend.
But what is the evidence? What is the evidence that Mr. Hamid Ansari wanted you to invite Nusrat Mirza? Was it said directly by him to you? Was it said through his office?
No. Through his office, Mr. Ashok Diwan, who was director at that time, and today also he is working as OSD to the present vice president.
And you're saying he was annoyed, so he did not stay. Did you know anything about Nusrat Mirza? Why did you not invite him if the vice president wanted him to come? Why?
I was not knowing the background, but that was not the ground. I have not invited even the Chief Justice of Pakistan, Iftikhar Mohammad Chaudhry, who was sitting Chief Justice of Pakistan and who happens to be the Vice President of International Council of Jurists. And I have not invited any Pakistani. All bar leaders are known to me. Because I am not invited because we were going to discuss on international terrorism, and in India we feel that Pakistan is patronizing these terrorists.
So Mr. Nusrat
I was
Mirza,
not interested.
So Mr. Nusrat Mirza, did he come for the 2010 conference, yes or no?
No, he has not come. We have not invited him. So he can't, nobody can, unauthorized person can enter also. So he has not come, we have not invited in spite of the request of the Honorable Vice President.
So then let me ask Dr. Sambit Patra. I'm coming to you, Tehseen Poonawala.
May I cross-examine him just
one minute? He is the head of the Bar Council, and you want to cross-examine him without filing in a court. You want to cross. 1 minute. Let me ask Dr. Sambit Patra. Dr. Sambit Patra, अगर नुसरत मिर्जा जी आए ही नहीं थे 2010 में, तो परसों का प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस आपने किया किस इशू पे? क्योंकि नुसरत मिर्जा तो आए ही नहीं थे, number one. And number two, he came in 2009. That is the real issue. But the allegations that have been made or the statements that have been made by Dr. Aggarwala can be easily answered by the OSD to the Vice President. And the Congress says, if you have any charge, if you can prove any charge, why don't you investigate the matter and take the due action against the former Vice President? So what's stopping you?
See, Navika, there are two parts to the question. Part one, as far as the credibility of these whole accusations are concerned. And second, whether we would investigate and, in fact, take action against the former Vice President. Coming to the first part of the question that you have asked, look, as far as Hamid Ansari and the Congress party are concerned, they were very conveniently only skirting around the first part, that 2010 Nusrat Mirza was not invited. And very conveniently they had, in fact, put behind the wheel that 2009 also, there was an event by Jama Masjid United Forum in which they had shared the dais. And once these pictures got viral, once these pictures were out, in fact, the Congress party and Mr. Hamid Ansari were left with no other option. And that's the reason as to why they have retorted to just a single line denial. The second part is, just imagine what Mr. Aggarwala says today. Mr. Aggarwala says that Mr. Hamid Ansari, the then Vice President, in fact, for the International Jurists Conference on Terrorism, wanted that Mr. Nusrat Mirza should again be invited to India and should be a participant in the conference, and to which, in fact, the communication was made to Mr. Aggarwala, the organizer, through his OSD, Mr. Diwan, Ashok Diwan. Of course, this shows that there was some kind of connection between the Vice President and the concerned journalist, and this became a news, not because the Bharatiya Janata Party brought out the news. This became a news because the journalist in question, Mr. Mirza, he came out and accepted to the fact while he was being interviewed by a YouTuber that, look, I was invited by none other than the Vice President of India, and I worked for the ISI. I went to India, keeping all the rules aside. I should not have been allowed more than 2 or 3 times, but I went to 5 cities of India. The Vice President invited me, and all these informations I passed on to the ISI. So just imagine a democratic country like India, Pakistan being its better knower as far as peace process is concerned. It wants to bleed India, when such an important disposition comes by a journalist who was participant in various programs in India, that too concerning the Vice President who has reigned the longest time in India as a Vice President for 10 long years. Shouldn't this be a point of discussion? Of course this should be a point of discussion, and the onus squarely lies with the Vice President, the then Vice President, Mr. Hamid Ansari, to come clean on this. As far as the investigation and the second part of your question is concerned, well, Navika, I would say, look, this is the tactics of the Congress party. They would first tease you. Acha, agar humne galti kiya hai, to hame investigate karo na. And the moment the ED calls them, then the hell breaks loose. I mean, 21st we are investigating Sonia Gandhi. We, in the sense, the country is investigating Sonia Gandhi on the National Herald case. She has been summoned by the enforcement director. For all these years, the Congress party was teasing us. Bula ke dikhao.
Any charge against national security, ED can't investigate.
No, I gave you an example. I gave you an example of ED and Sonia Gandhi, that we were teased that even Sonia Gandhi is not being investigated. So as far as Hamid Ansari is concerned, categorically and very responsibly, I will say, look, Vice President's post is a very important, coveted, revered post. These are serious allegations. Please don't think that these allegations are not under scrutiny. Of course, keeping in view the importance of the post, these scrutiny probably may not be in the public domain, but of course a lens would be cast.
Fair point, Dr. Patra. Now let me come and ask this question to Tehseen Poonawalla. And Tehseen Poonawalla, I know you are jumping, you are raising your hand, and you're extremely restless because you want to cross-examine Adish Aggarwala ji. But I will not give you that pleasure. Why? I'll tell you. I'm saying forget what Nusrat Mirza was saying. I'm saying forget what Mr. Aggarwala is saying. I'm saying even forget the 2010 conference. Let's come to only one question on this debate, which I'm going to really stick to as a matter of fact. which is the picture on your screen.
That's right.
And that picture is of 2009. Within a year of 26/11, within a year of a terror attack on the heart of India, within a year when Mumbai was held captive for nearly 4 days, within a year of 157 people losing their lives, within a year of all of that happening, and within a year of losing braves who tried to protect people's lives, we see the former vice president sitting on the dais with a Pakistan journalist who even if I say, put aside that he's an ISI agent, the fact that he's a Pakistani and he's sitting on the dais at a time when the bilateral ties between the countries have been suspended following the 26/11 attack. What is that Pakistani doing on the dais with the Vice President of India, a constitutional position, possibly the number 2 in protocol after the President? I want to ask you, what is he doing there? Because you know and I know that any invitation to any VVIP means there is a rigorous manner in which the seating plan, the dais, the people, even the meters, how many meters does the VVIP have to walk to his chair, how many people will be sitting to his right, how many people to his left, how far will they be seated, and whether he's coming in from the left of the room or the right of the room. There is a proper drill that happens. Are you saying Mr. Hamid Ansari did not know who is sitting, and if he knew who is sitting, how was he discussing how to thwart terrorism with a Pakistani? Are the Pakistanis going to give us lessons on how to deal with terrorism in India 1 year after 26/11?
Namaskar, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm really appalled that you can smile when we're talking about 26/11.
Namaskar, ma'am. Thank you for having me, sure. Namaskar to all my fellow panelists and all your viewers. Very long question, lot of things said. Please give me the courtesy because I want to explain everything. But yes, like you were extremely appalled by the picture of the Honorable ex-Vice President.
And your smile.
Fair point. Like you were, I'm smiling because you're not allowing me to cross-examine Mr. Aggarwal, because you know that I will be able to get the truth out, and therefore you've conveniently not allowed.
2009 stick
correct.
To
So then 2010 is a bogey. Do we accept that? Okay, now please let me speak.
If it gives you pleasure, my friend,
but then allow me to give it to the viewers.
It a bogey, but come to 2009.
But I will also beg of you to allow your viewers to understand, because there's a lot of confusion, perhaps deliberately, but I want to talk about 2009.
Only 2009.
Which means 2010 is a bogey. Of course they are, and we bow down to them.
You will, speak
I will not.
Around them.
I will absolutely not. Please give me the courtesy. Please allow me. Let's talk to 2009 and then 2010. Please allow me to do both. 2009, just like you're appalled with that picture of the honorable former vice president with the Pakistani, just like all of us, including you, were rightly appalled when the Prime Minister went unannounced to Pakistan and invited ISI to India and continued to shoot when ISI created the incidents in various parts of our country. Like we are appalled with this picture. But what about this picture? As my friend Dr. Sambit Patra, the BJP spokesperson, rightly said, was an invite from the Jama Masjid Committee. Just to remind the viewers who are very intelligent that the Jama Masjid Imam is the same gentleman the honorable former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji went to ask that BJP votes for him. Point number one. Now that the BJP, I request you, man. No, he went to ask for votes. Please, I request you, don't. They were not interrupted. Please, I request you. Now, the greatest party.
Is asking for votes a crime?
Ma'am, please allow me to.
No, is asking for votes.
Sure, it's not. They went to the Jama Masjid Imam to ask for votes. It's not a crime. Second, the greatest and the most powerful political party on earth, the BJP, is of course, and rightly so, on national security, worked up about a YouTube video, which it should be. First, there was to be worked out about WhatsApp, but it is true. But then 8 years in power with the BJP, could they not investigate what has happened? And I'll tell you why I'm doing this, and please allow me to link this to 2010, because the gentleman, Mr. Ashok Diwan, the IAS officer that Mr. Aggarwal refers to, continues to be the honorable OSD to the honorable current Vice President of India. So if the IAS officer is doing illegal acts, it is my request to your channel, through Sambit ji and to Aggarwal ji, now that you're such a learned lawyer, Aggarwal ji, please Aggarwal ji, right now on Times Now promise, you will file a police complaint against Mr. Ashok Diwan and against Mr. Hamid Ansari. So Dr. Sambit Patra for 8 years could not investigate, can begin an investigation investigation and do something, because the intelligence has failed. One last point that your viewers must know. Right, Navika ji rightly pointed out what is protocol. The fact that Mr. Aggarwal comes out and is making all these baseless claims, Mr. Aggarwal and Dr. Sambit Patra, with respect to you, Dr. Patra, you know I have a lot of respect to you. Can you put out Mr. Hamid Ansari's protocol list? Mr. Hamid Ansari, the Delhi police records shows that he was supposed to be in that program for 20 minutes. Did he change it overnight? Was the Delhi police not informed? Can you put that out? Can Mr. Aggarwal produce one letter that Mr. Ashok Diwan or Hamid Ansari asked him to call A gentleman, B gentleman? But the fact is that Mr. Hamid Ansari is being repeatedly targeted from 2016, 2017. But one last example, I will end. Dr. Patra, you remember several leaders of your political party, the BJP that governs us, trolled the Honorable Vice President of India for not saluting the Indian Armed Forces at the Republic Day because Modi ji was saluting. Since then, 7 years, 7 Republic Days, Modi ji is never saluted. Venkaiah Naidu ji is never saluted because Modi ji was wrong in protocol. But you all went ahead trolling Hamid Ansari. The fact of the matter is, you all have a problem with Hamid Ansari, and that is the evidence out here.
As usual, whataboutery is what we've got. Dr. Patra, respond before I get in Dr. Anand Ranganathan. Dr. Patra, since pointed questions were asked of you, your response first.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
See, Navika, as to why we have certain questions about Hamid Ansari, as to why we are discussing about the credibility of Hamid Ansari, there is a history attached to it. Please draw from the bookshelf a very important book written by Mr. N.K. Sood, one of the top officials of the RAW, R-A-W, RAW. And please go to the pages of this book. What does the RAW official write? I mean, look, this RAW officer's book came into print even before we formed the government in the center. And this RAW officer, Mr. Sood, goes ahead to say that while Mr. Hamid Ansari was a diplomat in Iran, in Tehran, he saw to it that many of these RAW officers were exposed. Their life was put into jeopardy. Their life was put into street. It was thrown under the bus. And there was one Mr. Mathur who was even, in fact, abducted by the authorities in Iran because of this kind of nature of Mr. Hamid Ansari. And just not one official, many officials have in fact in their books or otherwise written so about or talked so about Mr. Hamid Ansari, including Mr. Yadav, who is a top RAW official, that in many countries where Mr. Hamid Ansari acted as a diplomat, he in fact was quite sympathetic towards reasons apart from India. And not just this, while it was the Sharia courts, while it was the Jinnah portrait discussion, while it was the triple talaq, while it was the Indo-American Muslim Council debate in US, we had heard as to what Mr. Hamid Ansari had to offer. So of course, when these all add up with what happened on the dais, and we have the information that it was none other than Mr. Hamid Ansari who wanted Nusrat Mirza to be called, and Nusrat Mirza himself acknowledging the fact that he was called by Hamid Ansari and he was a spy. So what do you think? We should sit tight, we should not discuss, we should not ask question of Hamid Ansari? And as far as what are you doing about Hamid Ansari, because this is a democratic country, we are not a dictatorial body, we just don't go out pulling people out of their homes and charging them. We debate, we discuss, and of course we investigate. It's not that we don't investigate, but the investigation has its own time, it takes its own pace. Because we are a democratic country, our judiciary has its own ways.
Well, no, Tehseen, no, I'm sorry, Tehseen. Dr. Suman Raman, do you think is less qualified to answer the question? So please allow him. Dr. Suman Raman, why is there no explanation for the protocol and the dais arrangement? A pointed question. Can anybody sit next to a vice president or 3 people away without it being cleared by protocol of the vice president's office and the security that is, with him? I want to ask you, so how was this Pakistani sitting next to the vice president during this conference 1 year after 26/11?
Point number one, Mr. Nusrat Mirza is a person who must be believed because he said the United States caused the earthquake in Japan in 2011. He said that the United States caused the tsunami in 2004 by sending up a space plane, X-738. So this is the kind of credibility of the man whose word you choose to believe. And I am appalled that we can believe the word of a Pakistani journalist over the word of your own former vice president. I mean, it is shameful. I mean, Mr. Hamid Ansari is on record saying he has no clue as to who this man was. He says, I did not invite him for any program. We will not believe him, but we will choose to believe a Pakistani journalist who is a specialist in conspiracy theories. Point number one. Point number two, let us come to this matter of the charges that are made against Mr. Mr. Ansari. It would take few minutes for Mr. Ashok Diwan to be questioned and asked, look, is this factually right? Did Mr. Ansari exert undue influence on you and force you to do this? Third point, Dr. Patra spoke eloquently about Mr. Sood's book. I mean, it is the allegations are shocking, and in 8 years, they have not thought it necessary to order an investigation. A man who they are effectively, Dr. Patra says, Mr. Sood accused him of throwing our own R&AW officials under the bus. I mean, that's a shocking charge. And in 8 years in office, they have not found it necessary to even order an investigation. I mean, that is as serious a security lapse as anything that one can come across.
Fair
and
point.
let's be very clear, Navika, this gentleman, Mr. Aggarwala, is, last point, Mr. Aggarwala is not necessarily a politically non-aligned person. He is the person who has written the book Narendra Modi, Harbinger of Prosperity and Apostle of World Peace. He is also the gentleman who's filed a case against the wearing of the hijab. So let's be very clear that he is not in his capacity merely as a lawyer, but he also has certain political alignments, period.
Well, let me get in Dr. Anand Ranganathan. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, some of the points about the credibility of Mr. Nusrat Mirza, are extremely valid, I would say, because some of the statements that he makes are outrageous. But the fact of the matter is, why is everybody just skirting the issue of the 2009 conference? The fact that Mr. Hamid Ansari was at the dais and the fact that the Pakistani journalist was there within a year of 26/11 when there were no bilateral ties between India and Pakistan. Nobody seems to be commenting on that.
We were playing cricket with Pakistan in
Yeah, good evening, Navika. It's absolutely smashing debate, a wonderful debate, and I congratulate all my fellow panelists for making very, very many excellent points. But as to the points that I feel they have made that are suspect, please allow me to rebut them without interruption, because I have been waiting very patiently for my time. So let me start one by one. First, with the good Dr. Raman, as to him saying, why would you believe someone who calls himself an ISI spy when he also believes in outlandish theory? Why, with that logic, why would anyone ever believe someone who believes in flying horses and man walking on water, or water turning to wine, or immaculate conception? I mean, these two things don't gel well. As to what Mr. Patra says, I agree with Dr. Raman that Mr. Patra has made a very serious allegation about research and analysis wing and the suspect role of Mr. Former Vice President in it. It has to be investigated, and just like Mr. Raman says, it has been 8 years. Dr. Patra, for him saying that these things take time, well, do they take 80 years or 800 years? If you can't do it in 8 years, what do you expect to do? Number 3, as far as Tehseen is concerned, of course, you're absolutely right. He's made a lot of whataboutery allegation. But can I please come to this topic, take a minute and then address Tehseen as well? Navika, I must say this, the matter is serious. And it must be investigated to its logical end, because it is a constitutional post. The second highest in terms of hierarchy, if I am not mistaken. And of course, it goes without saying that a man is innocent until proven guilty. The other thing, 2 things important that I have to say out here, that even though the matter is serious, the matter is not about the former vice president meeting a Pakistani. No, it's not, because to be honest, Mr. Modi also met, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. It is about him in the same room, possibly meeting an ISI spy. If you remember, around the same time, there was a gentleman called Ghulam Nabi Fayed. You remember him? You did a fantastic show on it, I remember. He met a lot of Indian journalists Indian diplomats and Indian politicians. Later turned out that he was convicted in a US court for being an ISI spy. I remember he in fact tried to recruit Gautam Navlakha as well. So the other thing also around the same time, Navika, you must remember we entered into this absolutely crazy Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. So soon after the 28/11, we entered into an agreement with Pakistan where Pakistan extracts this statement from us that India will also not interfere. Yes, our government at that time was doing some really crazy things. But it has to be said that the matter, and unequivocally I say this, the matter is not about the religion of the former vice president, as Tehseen, my good friend, is alleging. Because Ghulam Fai met a lot of non-Muslims and tried to recruit them as well. I don't care which faith the former vice president belongs to, as long as his allegiance is first and foremost to India. But it also has to be said, Navika, just 30 seconds, that it is Mr. Ansari himself who repeatedly brings up his religion. Who can forget? He's coining the euphemism Dara Hua Musalman. Sheer genius on his part. All around us, all we see are Dara Hua Musalmans. From Jammu, where Dara Hua Musalmans are shouting from top of mosque that they will behead Nupur and all those who oppose Azan and Hijab, to Hubli, where Dara Hua Musalmans are pouring onto streets because some Hindu kid photoshopped a Bhagwa flag. From Aurangabad, where Dara Hua Musalmans are rioting in the streets because someone Facebook post said Aurangzeb was a mass murderer. To Assam, where Dara Hua Musalmans are burning down police station. Everywhere you look, we see Mr. Ansari's Dara Hua Musalman. So thank you, Mr. Ansari, for being an oracle. And who can forget the man's antecedents for actually felicitating the PFI chief? So he comes with a baggage of history. But it is not about religion, it is about what he does. All that said,
absolutely.
I have to say this.
Absolutely.
With all responsibility, that it is this government's responsibility to investigate this.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. And Manasvi Thapar, I want to ask you, it's not just about the Dara Hua Musalman, it's not just about the fact that a PFI functionary was honored by him, it's also about the fact that Yasin Malik meets the Prime Minister of that time, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and then a working group is set up, and working group which is chaired by Dr. Hamid Ansari actually recommends that people from across the world should be roped in so as to solve the Kashmir problem. Of course, we are within our rights to ask the question. And the only question I continue to ask, how is Mr. Hamid Ansari, the former vice president, giving statement after statement that I don't know this guy, I have never met him, I have not called him. I'm willing to believe him because I have nothing against, not believing a former vice president and believing a loony, a former journalist, as Suman C. Raman wants to call him. The fact of the matter is, there is a picture. We know how protocol works for VVIPs in this country. How is a man on the dais without the knowledge of the vice president? And then if there is the knowledge of the vice president, why can't somebody answer this question? What's a Pakistani doing within a year of 26/11, trying to find ways to fight terrorism, for God's sake? A Pakistani teaching us after 26/11?
Good evening, Navika ji. Hope I'll get an uninterrupted time like my friend Anand ji got. You have asked some very relevant questions, but these questions need to be investigated. But the point when we talk about investigation, my learned friend Sambit Patra says that we'll discuss, we'll debate, and right time of investigation when it will come, it will come. It is on the credibility of India. If an allegation of such by a fantasy journalist, Mr. Mirza, makes on the vice president of former vice president of India, and the ruling party says, "Yeah, wo to guilty hai. He was a sleeper cell," and they're okay with it. They don't want to investigate because that's a political gimmick for them. They want to play political cards, and I'll tell you why I'm correct on this is 8 July 2020, investigation was led on 3 Congress-controlled trusts: Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, Rajiv Gandhi Charitable Trust, Indira Gandhi Foundation. Till date, there is no investigation done. Even after investigation was started, there is no outcome. And after that, we had a huge hue and cry in the country on the pact being signed between Congress and China. No investigation done on that also. They believe in debates. They believe in giving press briefings headlines. They don't don't believe in investigations because they know there is nothing there out in that investigation.
So explain
let's
to me.
make political
So explain to me.
points here. Let's make a political brownie
let's
points
actually
here.
no. Don't run away. No whataboutery. Explain to me what is the honorable Pakistani. Let's forget he's a journalist. Let's forget he's dubious. What is an honorable Pakistani sitting on the dais for to discuss terrorism when there were no bilateral ties between India and Pakistan? They had been suspended after 26/11. What is he doing on the dais? Can you answer that one question?
Navika ji, he is not honorable for any Indian. I don't know how do you say
because he's sitting with the honorable vice president.
If he's sitting
with the honorable vice president of the time. What is he doing on the dais talking terrorism? He's a Pakistani, for God's sake.
Navika ji, let's investigate.
Let's
you
investigate.
And I cannot.
You don't have an answer. You don't have an answer
ji,
to that. So
right,
you are also doing whataboutery.
Tehseen
Poonawala, answer to me. What is that man doing on the dais in that in that conference where the vice president is there? What is he doing? I want you to answer just that one question, nothing else.
Pakistani is doing the same thing that Mehul Choksi was doing in the Prime Minister's house. If by this association Hamid Ansari is guilty, by the same association in the Prime Minister's house, when Prime Minister is calling Mehul Bhai Choksi in Davos, hanging around with Nirav Modi and taking pictures and selfies, the Prime Minister is guilty. So now we have to have the same yardstick. Hamid Ansari is guilty, so Modi ji is guilty. I don't think Modi ji is guilty. Number two, this program was organized by the Jama Masjid Committee. Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji went there for votes.
Anand Ranganathan, Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksi, they are okay with comparing to a Pakistani sitting on the dais with the vice president. Can you please explain and give a sense of perspective
they were in
to your
PM's
own
house.
friend?
How were they in PM's house?
Do you want to give a sense of perspective to Mr. Tehseen Poonawala?
2 months after this, we were playing cricket.
You know, Navika, I would have disowned Tehseen, but he treated me to a lunch, so I'm being kind to him. Tehseen, enough of your whataboutery. Let me give you 2 reasons here. Number 1, Navika, when you talk about bilateral ties, can I please correct you? Because at the time this conference was held where all these people are kowtowing and, hobnobbing with the Pakistani spy, India had already entered into Sharm el-Sheikh agreement in 2009. Shamefully capitulating and agreeing that India will not interfere in the affairs of Pakistan, especially Baluchistan. Such a shameful thing. Tehseen hasn't answered that. He is the king of whataboutery, but he will not talk about Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. Secondly, I want to ask Tehseen a very simple question, which Dr. Raman also, put his hand on. Talking about this outlandish spy, outlandish. You know, there is a Congress leader right now, Tehseen, who believes that 9/11 was orchestrated by the US government. He's on record, there's a video of him. Do you know what his name is, Congress leader's name? It is Kanhaiya Kumar. Do you disown Kanhaiya Kumar? Do you want him to be sacked from Congress?
Well, let's ask that question to Dr. Sumant Raman. Dr. Sumant Raman, you want to respond?
Look, Navika, this is a question where we are dealing with very clearly the former Vice President of India. The topic is not Kanhaiya Kumar, and if that in what case
so that's your answer. So that's your answer. And on the topic of the Vice President and the Kashmiri journalist being on the dais.
1 minute.
The Pakistani journalist being on the dais. Do you have an answer?
Not only did we have one sec, Navika, 1 second. Yeah, I have an answer. 1 minute. The organizers should be the first ones to be questioned who extended the invitation. Second, question the Vice President's Secretariat. Is this fact of what Mr. Aggarwala is saying is actually true or not? It will probably take less than a day for the government to get all this information together, because some of them are even serving.
So the ball is back in the court of Dr. Sambit Patra, and Dr. Sambit Patra, instead of raising questions, everybody here is asking the question that you are the ruling party of India. Instead of raising questions, you must answer them.
Now let me answer this question right now in this forum. First and foremost, to all those hypocrites who are saying, just a second, to all those hypocrites who are saying, why do we have to believe a journalist from Pakistan? Don't you believe your own Vice President? where were these very people when a French journalist from some other country said that there was a ghotala in Rafale? They did not believe their own CAG. They did not believe their own Prime Minister. Yes. They did not believe their own Defence Minister. But they chose to believe this French journalist. And today they're saying, why do you believe this Pakistani journalist? Now, second very important point. All those people who are saying that this Pakistani journalist, Mr. Mirza, has no credibility. He's a dubious character. It's a matter of more concern. A man of dubious character who does not have any credibility shared dies with the Vice President of India. You knew very well that he is dubious. You knew right from the very beginning, as you are claiming, that his credibility does not exist. But you wanted this man without any credibility, the man of dubiousness, to be seated next to the Vice President of India. And thirdly, and very importantly, remember, it's not about religion. It is about the wine and dine club. I mean, there are journalists who belong to different religion, who were hell-bent to prove that Burhan Wani's father was a headmaster. There were just a second. There were journalists who belong to different religion. Religion has nothing to do with this, but they belong to a club. They belong to the wine and dine cottage industry club, and they were flourishing because all this existed. Now finally the lid has been blown off.
It's very clear. There are some tough questions.
This is the truth.
And as it is said, especially when it concerns a high office, a constitutional office of this country like the Vice President's office, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. And that's the question the country is asking the former Vice President Hamid Ansari. Sir, this is not about who's saying what. The people of this country need to know, how does a Pakistani journalist get to share the dais with a Vice President without the Vice President saying yes to it, without the Vice President having a role in this? Because we all know protocol and security doesn't allow this to happen. And these questions must be answered because they concern the high office of this country, and it concerns the timing of that conference, 2009, a year after 26/11, where 157 people lost their lives, and India has never seen a terror attack of that kind, a terror attack that really sent bullets through the heart of this country, wounding it with the deepest of cuts.